Is Cardano just a regular project, or is it going to be probably one of the most significant projects in the cryptocurrency space? Well, let's find out. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another video. My name is BN, and today I have with me the one and only Darlington, and Darlington is a Cardano ambassador, and usually, make a joke and say he's a Cardano maximalist. But Darlington is not just a maximalist of Cardano. He's also a very strong proponent of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. His background is in programming and coding for sure. For some reason, all the Cardano guys, they're very technical. Um, and it's really nice to have Darlington with us today. Darlington, welcome to the discussion.
Hey, BN, thanks for having me again. Yeah, glad to be here. Cardano maximalist. I spend a lot of time in Cardano. I don't know if I'm a maxi though. I think I would spend time in other spaces if I had additional time, you know? It's just sometimes when you get into something, especially something technical, it can consume you.
Absolutely,
So I
absolutely.
happen to spend a lot of my time in Cardano. But I every now and then I look over the fence and see what the other guys are doing, and they're
Right.
doing some cool stuff too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much project in the space, so there's so much cookies in the jar. Now you're in the States or you're back home right now? You mentioned.
I'm currently traveling. I'm traveling. I
Nice.
my trip started with Cardano Summit in Dubai. I'll be in Liberia, Kenya, and Ghana.
Jeez. Man, you
Before.
guys are flying everywhere. See, Cardano is trying to dominate the market somehow. Well, my audience now know that you are a Cardano ambassador. What is being an ambassador of Cardano like? What are your responsibilities?
Yeah, it really depends. And actually, the ambassador program is getting reshaped and cleaned up a little bit. So some of what we say here might change over the next 3, 4, 6 months. But the ambassador program is something that is ran by the Cardano Foundation, the nonprofit that is tasked with a lot of the Cardano brands, tasked with helping institutions understand Cardano, helping governments and policymakers understand Cardano, and sometimes even helping them on board onto Cardano, things of those nature. And one of the ways this they sort of function in making out of that happen is having ambassadors that can sort of educate or carry the Cardano message or flag, let's say, in different ways. So one of the ways is if you speak a different language in addition to English, you can be a translator. So that means you are free to go around into the community and find content that is in English and translate it to your native language, French, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese.
Wow.
And for each translation you do, the Cardano Foundation will compensate you. And then in addition, you get access to the foundation and access to some of the people that are building on Cardano to sort of help you do your work better. And then, so translation is one of them, writing content, and that's how I carry out my ambassadorship. I write content about Cardano at lightdonation.com. We have a library session where we publish content every Monday. So for each content that I do, each article that I write, there's a compensation that I can claim if I want to through the Cardano Foundation.
Wow.
And then the two other roles you can serve are meetup organizers if you want to have meetups in your town, or you can serve the another role called moderator. So any Cardano forum, Cardano has an official forum, forum.cardano.org. Cardano also has a Stack Overflow, not Stack, or Stack Exchange. So if you are moderating on any Cardano forum, you can apply to get financial support
That's
for
amazing.
carrying out that task. Yeah.
Now you
So
talk about the Cardano ambassador is, I mean, most of the work you guys do is funded by the Cardano Foundation. Where does the Cardano Foundation gets the money from?
the foundation is a Swiss-based nonprofit. So it was funded in Switzerland. And I mention that because when you're a nonprofit in Switzerland, the rules are very different than if you're a nonprofit in other countries. The government actually becomes your manager as a nonprofit. So whatever statute that you form with as a nonprofit, there are people who would check multiple times a year to see if you are operating according to your statute. And if you're not, it can come with pretty heavy fines. Not for the nonprofit, for the individuals that are in that role. So it's almost like leading a nonprofit in Switzerland comes with personal responsibility.
Right, right.
Right. So one of the things, but anyways, so um so the way money flows in and out is pretty strict. It's pretty by rules that were written a few years after Cardano started. But the foundation was seeded with some amount of ADA,
Right.
about 500 million or so ADA. That ADA mostly is staked, so that ADA isn't really being spent as much. But if you are familiar with blockchain, proof of stake blockchain that has staking as the security mechanism, you get rewarded
Oh, nice.
in the currency for staking. So the foundation taking all their ADA is actually making more ADA.
Oh, so they're being incentivized by the system with more ADA,
Yeah,
and then they can use that
right.
ADA to undertake some of the
So to do
expenses.
things to some of these initiatives, and also the Cardano has provides some services to corporations and big businesses and big banks and things like that too, that also sometimes provide other source of revenue. Um, but their full source of revenue, it's not just the ADA, because the ADA that they were giving really, if you look at the balance, it doesn't go down all that much for how
Right.
big the foundation is. So to be honest, I don't know the full scope of how they get their money. I know some of it is probably coming from that ADA rewards, but I think other is coming from other places too.
That's
Other revenue
interesting.
generating activities that they do. Probably my guess would be consulting, but don't hold me on that.
Yes, but IOHK, which is the other uh, split of the whole Cardano ecosystem, you have the Cardano Foundation, you have Emergo and IOHK, which is the scientists and all the PhD where all those guys are. I'm expecting those are the guys that probably do like consultations for Cardano. IOHK does the consultation. Am I right? Or does people from the Cardano
Well,
Foundation and the
IOHK is
regular
a
do?
for-profit company.
Oh,
IOHK is a for-profit company, and they do engineering work, right? There's
right.
consultation can come in many formats. They can come in and say you want to consult on legislation, or something like that, or policy, or
Reading white
those kinds of
papers,
things.
reviewing white
Um,
papers or projects.
versus if you want to build something. A lot of
Right.
the I don't know how much, but a significant amount of some of Coinbase technology was built by IOHK.
Wow,
Um,
that's
so they
amazing.
are a blockchain company. They even have their own blockchain, partner chain, Midnight. I'm not sure if you've heard about it, or if you guys in the audience have, but that is a blockchain that it is a partner chain to Cardano.
Right.
It is being designed as a privacy chain, that's meant for running large user-based applications that preserve privacies. That is entirely a chain that IOHK, the company, is building as a commercial product. So they have other commercial products. They have a Prism. It's an identity product. So they're a blockchain engineering company.
Nice. Wow. So, a lot of people talk about Cardano being one of the most significant project in the cryptocurrency space. We can tell from what the market's been doing recently too. Obviously, sometimes you can follow the money in some cases, and we've seen huge money getting into Cardano. Like today, the market went up almost 20%, and with Cardano's market cap, that's approximately a billion or a couple $1 billion. That's a lot of money. What makes Cardano a project that is so attractive to a lot of potential investors or a lot of investors in the space?
Well, there's a saying in Cardano, in the Cardano spheres, measure twice, cut once. Cardano was not an idea. It wasn't a experiment. It wasn't really a, like a side project. It was a thoroughly researched project, right? The whole concept was, here are these specific challenges. Now that blockchain as a technology exists, here are specific challenges. How can we use this technology to solve these challenges? So a lot of things were thought about. A lot of things were thought about, all the way from personal security. So the what I mean by that is the ability for individual that are holding the currency to relatively be safe and secure whenever possible. Obviously, people are going to do stupid things. But for you to just lose your fund, or for transaction to not go through and then you don't get your money back, like the way other chains sometimes experience, that doesn't happen on Cardano, right? And there's a very technical reason why that doesn't happen. That's not an incidental feature. That was an intended outcome of some of the research. The ability for Cardano to comply with regulations and metadata and KYC, like that stuff exists. If governments wanted to use Cardano in those contexts, there are tools and resources to make it function in that environment. The ability for staking to happen without someone having to do it on your behalf, or someone having to custody your funds, or a lot of the intermediaries that tend to sit between the people who own the funds and the people who are actually doing the staking work, right? That doesn't exist in Cardano, right? So that leads again to more security, because every ADA holder is always in control of their ADA, whether they're staking or not staking. They don't have to send that ADA to someone else. So the list go on and on and on.
That's
Cardano has
amazing.
a separate layer for doing the pure accounting. So nothing to do with dApps, nothing to do with complex logic. Simple accounting, who owns what, moving a value from one place. All of those accounting transactions are special and are handled on their own separate layer than, say, if you're using a dApp, or if you're using some application, or if you have some smart contracts that need to run some calculations, that happens on a different layer. So you get this situation where you're able to scale the different layers independently depending on the workload. And the most important part, the accounting part, where the value actually moves, that part is protected from an app going viral. So you get a smart contract going viral, you get, tens of thousands of people using it. Smart contract layer will slow down, because it's a finite resource. But all the accounting stuff, the money moving stuff, that would keep ticking, right?
Right.
Since Cardano came online, it has never stopped
Yeah.
operating, right?
It's,
Which
you know,
is
and,
which
and
is
that's
crazy.
probably one of the most fascinating with Cardano. I think a lot of investors and potential investors and folks in the cryptocurrency space, they're very confident with the technology Cardano is bringing forth, and they're so confident even with the reputation of peer review. Cardano has written over 100 or 200 peer reviews, documentation and papers that have been reviewed by experts in computer science and even like Ouroboros is, you know, which is this staking mechanism that Cardano uses. You know, I think Cardano really gets staking to a whole different level. Now, to my audience, the idea of staking is something that a lot of people might not fully understand. When you tend to explain the concept of staking to an ordinary person, how would you break that down?
Well, really, at the end of the day, it comes down to security. Right. The whole point of why staking exists is security. So with blockchain, um, you don't have some bank or some government making sure everyone is playing by the rules. So all that responsibility um tend to be automated and carried out by software, right? So that software, um, part of the way that software can secure itself and secure and make sure no one is able to override the software, is using the concept of staking, or you might hear the concept of proof of work, right? That's all it's doing, right? Proof of work or proof of stake, all they're doing really is providing that security so the software that controls the whole system cannot be tampered with, right? How it does that, that is quite um technical. The simple version of how that security happens with staking on Cardano um is that when you are contributing to the whole staking system, that creates better randomness. The more different people are contributing, the more randomness exists on where in a system different security operations will happen, vulnerable operations. So it's a record keeping system, it's a ledger, which means it has to be updated. Updating that ledger is a vulnerable operation. So you want randomness to be part of that. If nobody knows who the next record updater will be, it becomes really hard to um, coerce or introduce, bad code that would do something that is not supposed to happen, or to coordinate with other people, because it's there's randomness. You don't know who is responsible for what at any given second until right before the moment, right, or after the moment. So the more stake there are, the more stake there are in the system, the better randomness exists.
Right.
And in this case, with proof of stake, stake is just currency, right? Proof of work, your stake would be physical computer hardware that can contribute to the randomness of everything.
Right.
Right.
Even the concept of proof of stake, I noticed that when Cardano, obviously Cardano is a very strong proponent of proof of stake, and even Ethereum that used to be proof of work, obviously observed Cardano and what the Cardano community was doing, and the scientific logic uh, behind proof of stake. Ethereum is now technically a proof of stake uh, consensus mechanism project, is it?
Yeah, yeah, and this is what I mean by it. Cardano was not an idea, gone wild, right? Like Ethereum was a very they put a lot of work into it, right? But it wasn't the same research approach of how do we solve this really hard problem. So Ethereum always wanted proof of stake. It was just very hard to do. You had to do what Cardano did and start over and do a lot of research and do something like Ouroboros, right? To be a proof of stake. So so because Ethereum was trying to get out quite fast, since Bitcoin proved to be a successful technology, but quite limited, they wanted to get something with more freedom and more capability out quite fast. We have Ethereum, right? The generation two blockchain. But proof of stake was always part of the equation to achieve scale because if you don't have proof of stake, if you don't have, if your stake in the system, the thing that's securing the system, if that thing is inflexible, if it's confined to some box like a piece of computer hardware, it becomes harder to scale that thing to support tens of millions or hundreds, billions of people. Just imagine before we had things like Facebook, companies used to have their own physical room of servers.
Right.
Well, in those days, it was hard for one company to serve traffic of millions of people because that means you have to go literally spin up new servers, new physicals. It's just scaling is just so much harder. Well, things like Facebook and all the TikTok and the massive global applications can happen now because we have things like the cloud technology, which is a bunch of servers all over the world, way more server than any one application would ever need. But then there is software on top of all that layer um, to help a single application use 10% of all the servers that's available, or 50% or 80%, depending on the scale. So when you move your security to something that is that flexible, like the way the cloud is flexible, then you're able to scale better, right? So that's why
Interesting.
Ethereum is moving to proof of stake because that's the only way they can get bigger, better scale is to have that proof of stake mechanism. But
Uh,
even even speaking of scale, even recently, Vitalik, one of the core developers of Ethereum, was championing Cardano for using the Bitcoin style record keeping accounting, the UTXO accounting,
right.
because that UTXO accounting also contribute to the ability to scale. So Cardano was always designed to be something that would be massively scaled that could handle, say, a billion population. Yeah.
Interesting. That is quite interesting. I know Cardano community, you guys don't really talk a lot about Ethereum, but since you're here today, I would like to get your assessment of the progress of Ethereum. With the transition of proof of work, now it's proof of stake. Where do you think Ethereum is gonna head? I mean, obviously they're dominating the market right now in terms of layer one. Do you see Ethereum maintaining that dominance, or do you think Cardano is going to come and take it off?
Dominance is such a funny thing because Ethereum is dominating a very small box. The people of the world that's aware of blockchain is a very small set. I'm not going to guess the number because I have forgotten what the number is of blockchain users in the world, but it is a very small number compared to the whole world population, right? So Cardano is not trying to dominate Ethereum users. So in that sense, Ethereum will always dominate. Cardano is trying to bring in more people, the people who are not in blockchain yet, to bring them in a way that's actually useful to their daily life, right? What you will hear the term real-fi. That's kind of what the sort of the saying. How can we get blockchain to be used to build applications that people use in a real life every day?
Right.
But back to Ethereum. Ethereum, actually, at Lido Nation, in our library, we write about Ethereum a lot. We actually are doing a whole series on Cardano and Ethereum. So if you are already familiar with Cardano, but not with Ethereum, we will include a link in the show notes for
Sure.
you to check out that series, because it looks at this is how Ethereum does wallets. This is how Cardano does wallets. What are the trade-offs? What are the benefits? Why the Ethereum do it that way? Why is Cardano doing it this way?
Which one is
Our most recent article,
user friendly is one of the things that
right?
consumers are very concerned about. All the tech stuff, you and I probably might not have too much problem with the tech component, but I think for regular people, they want something that is pretty easy, and even the operation of the wallet, of transferring coins from one
Right.
wallet to another, all of that, has to come down so that a regular person can feel confident in engaging in those transactions. With obviously, like you mentioned, Ethereum is in a specific spot and they haven't really spread out yet. Cardano is trying to take portion of that market, especially on the international level. I know Cardano is in places like Ethiopia and other Rwanda and other African countries. Um, Other than obviously Cardano and maybe Bitcoin, what other projects in the space are you really interested in? I mean, that really gets your attention as not just an ambassador of the Cardano community, but also as someone who's um, a computer geek and someone who's a programmer that can kind of decipher codes and figure out which project might be more interesting.
Yeah, back to the obsession thing, right? I spent so much time building on Cardano. I seldom have chance to go out. But I like Ethereum where they're going. I like I as you were mentioning earlier just now. Um, both projects have contributed immensely to the blockchain space, right? Without Ethereum trying what they tried, who knows how long it would have taken for us to get to real smart contracts, right? So kudos to them for doing that. And they're still innovating, right, with going to proof of stake, the working at looking at sharding to be able to scale it even more, and all sorts of fancy stuff they're working on over there. Other than that, technology that have been super curious to me. Although I haven't had time to really dig into it. Something like Mina protocol. Um, Mina protocol is essentially on Cardano. The this oh my, I am blanking out right now. Uh, wow. Okay, I just had a total brain fart. But anyways, Mina protocol is interesting. They are trying to be like personal blockchain. Everybody has their own blockchain right on their phone or something like that. Um,
Nice.
not Algorand. Polkadot is very complex, which intrigues me. They are trying to be the layer zero, they call it. Quite interesting. Cardano new project Midnight is actually going to be utilizing a Polkadot technology called Substrate. And actually, it's funny because Polkadot borrows a lot of things from Ouroboros to implement its consensus. And now a Cardano partner chain, Midnight, is going to be utilizing Polkadot Substrate to implement that Midnight chain. So I love when blockchains are really innovating and sort of building on top of each other. So I've seen that with between Polkadot and Cardano. I've seen that with Algorand and Cardano and some of the stuff they're doing in governance and there's been lots of lesson between those two chains there on how to do governance, how not to do governance. Yeah, so those are some of the ones that have crossed my path. Radix is a new one I've been hearing about.
Hmm.
Recently I haven't had a chance to really dig into it. But the chains that are really taking a step back and trying to innovate and because we haven't scratched the surface yet on this
Right.
whole blockchain thing, right?
Right.
To get to where blockchain is useful, we need a lot more iterations and a lot more innovations to where it actually start being used to optimize the world and optimize global processes and informations and things like that. So
Absolutely.
any chain that's trying to do that, Vechain does a pretty good job too in
Yes. Tracking.
the tracking and yeah industry. Yeah. So those come to
That's
mind for
amazing.
me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's nice to see that you're actually interested in other projects as well, because I know you've been so buried in the whole Cardano community and the project and actually building on Cardano's platform. So, and that can take a lot of time. Obviously, that's one of the most challenging thing in the whole cryptocurrency space. You know, there's so much to do, and obviously you only have a finite amount of time to do what you have to do. So you have to sort out which area is of priority to your time. So now, before we wrap things up here, I know a lot of my listeners are interested in XRP and project like XLM, Stella, and Ripple. Obviously, with the lawsuit that happened, the victory, semi-victory, and what that means for the whole cryptocurrency space. Are you a cheerleader of XRP, XLM?
I don't know too much about XRM, but XRP missed its moment, right? To be a really useful technology. Yeah, I wish they went after smart contracts. I know, what's the project? Not Flare. Flare is trying
Red
to bring
Network.
smart
Yeah.
contract to SRP now. Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
If they had done that sooner, they would have been a much more useful chain. XRP ignore, it's not a going back to solving a world problem. They set out to solve a very specific problem,
Yes.
remittances, like moving money, like big banks, those types of things. And and the banks are not sitting on their laurels. The banks are actually adopting the banking system, SWIFT, the XRP was going after so much. They have done so many upgrades since XRP came out.
Wow.
Now when I transfer money from one bank to another, sometimes it takes one day. That's from taking 5 days. It's gone from 5 days down to one day. And they're still iterating and still iterating and still innovating. And most countries are moving towards CBDCs. So when those comes out, of course, Swift is going to tap into that. I think Swift even launched a private blockchain-like system recently. Banks have to opt into it. But if you opt into this new money transfer network, was it Swift or was it the US Fed? Fed Now, or maybe it was Fed Now, the US program. If banks opt into that Fed Now program, money will move in minutes, right? From one bank to another. So that problem XRP is trying to solve, they were so zeroing in on that problem specifically, and there's a massive incumbent that is smart enough to not be a blockbuster, to be like, oh, wait, yes, let's make some changes. So we'll see. We'll
You know, that
see
makes a
if
lot of
XRP can pivot.
that makes a lot of sense, you know, just thinking about it, because I
Yeah.
know XRP has been trying to incorporate smart contract now um into their model. And obviously smart contract is where everybody's at now. But XRP is trying to incorporate other things. I think that you know they can see that that potential that used to be there before is a little bit is diminishing because these banks are trying to kind of survive. So they're stretching out to
Right.
other things now, which is very interesting. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, so I hope they keep innovating now that they've sort of won or at least partially will say, won that legal challenge. They've got some breathing room to innovate and keep going at it. But just solving remittance, it's not enough, right?
Hmm.
Um,
It
yeah.
is, but we have to recognize it is a big problem though, right?
Yeah, right. It's a big problem. And because they poked at it, it's actually getting better, right? So they
You
should
think the
keep poking.
you think
Hopefully they'll, I
the
don't know, we'll see.
you think
Yeah.
the SEC uh legal issues against XRP was to technically kind of slow it down too? I mean, indirectly maybe, because it did slow the project down for a little bit, even the adoption of the project.
I don't know if the XRP was targeting the XRP. The FCC was targeting XRP specifically, or if they were just going after crypto in general. Countries, people take this for granted, but actually countries are really afraid of blockchain and crypto, right?
Right.
They haven't figured out how to control it yet. Some countries are starting to figure out how to control blockchain and crypto. Um, right? They haven't figured it out yet, so it scares the shit out of them.
Right.
So in countries like the US, where bureaucracy are actually the one that makes the most change in the day-to-day lives of Americans, if you happen to get, and bureaucracy can be so in places like the US, the bureaucracy can be such a bottleneck. You might get two people, sometimes one person, sometimes three people controlling the everyday life of 330 million people in a certain way. How much you pay for your house? It's a
Yes.
three-person caucus,
Hmm. That's true.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you get these crazy bureaucracy in place, and then whatever ideology they have, if it doesn't jive with technology, they can stifle innovation. So I feel like the XRP thing was all part of that. And of course, you know, these big businesses, XRP, dare I say, Binance, they do shady shit, right?
Of
But it's
course.
not like the whistle clean. So it's like they're putting fuel on the fire, they too were not always above the board and sort of invited the lion or whatever. I'm not sure what the analogy there would be. But I think definitely the US government was trying to slow the whole blockchain as an industry down because it threatens the authority,
Actually,
which is
it does.
crazy.
It does threaten the legacy system. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Mr. Darlington, thank you very much for your time. Some of our audience are very interested in Cardano and what the project is doing. And it was a really, really nice conversation. It's always nice having you. What would you say to some of our listeners who probably don't know a lot about cryptocurrencies, but are interested in getting into the market and just learning? What would be your advice to them, or where can they start?
Yeah, well, this is a shameless plug that's I think actually useful. Lightdonation.com is free. We don't charge anything. We will never charge anything. We publish a new article every Monday, and it's all about getting you to understand how the blockchain work. Because my policy with investing is I don't invest in anything I don't understand or use.
Yes,
All my investments I've made that's done really well have been things that I've used regularly. Either I use it at my work, even my cereal company, the cereal that I really liked, that whenever I had issues with, they were able to help me resolve it. When I bought stock for that cereal company, it split and like went up 8x
Wow.
over the course of the 3 years I had that stock for.
Right.
Oh, I would say try to understand it. There's lots and lots of blockchain, right? Just go through the mill, try to understand all of them, and see which one is trying to solve the problem you care about. Invest in that one because if that's successful, they will make a lot of money, and so will you.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the man himself. Do not invest in something you don't understand. It's always good to do your own research. Everything we say in this video is not financial advice. Go and do your own research. We're just people who are very, very committed to the implementation of blockchain technology. But we encourage you to do your own research. We also encourage you to hit the like buttons and subscribe to the channel. And Darlington and I will be coming up with more videos in the near future. Thank you so much, guys, for coming through, and we look forward to having you in our next video. Thank you.